There's nothing worth so much as liberty. Give me liberty or give me virus. Mask up for safety, people. Episode 14 is Deconstructing the Wolf and the House Dog. Let's get this one started. A lighthearted look at Aesop's fables and what they mean in today's world. Let's deconstruct each fable to find out who is learning the lesson and what really the lesson is to be learned. The Wolf and the House Dog. There was once a wolf who got very little to eat because the dogs of the village were so wide awake and watchful. He was really nothing but skin and bones, and it made him very downhearted to think of it. One night this wolf happened to fall in with a fine house dog who had wandered a little too far from home. The wolf would gladly have eaten him then and there, but the house dog looked strong enough to leave his mark should he try it. So the wolf spoke very humbly to the dog, complimenting him on his fine appearance. "You could be as well fed as I am, if you want to," replied the dog. "Leave the woods. There you live miserably. Why, you have to fight hard for every bite you get. Follow my example and you will get along beautifully." "What must I do?" asked the wolf. "Hardly anything," answered the dog. "Chase people who carry canes, bark at beggars, and fawn on the people of the house. In return you will get tidbits of every kind. Chicken bones, choice bits of meat, sugar, cake, and much more beside, not to speak of kind words and caresses." The wolf had such a beautiful vision of his coming happiness that he almost wept. But just then he noticed that the hair on the dog's neck was worn and the skin was chafed. "What is that on your neck?" "Nothing at all," replied the dog. "What? Nothing?" "Oh, just a trifle." "But please tell me." "Perhaps you see the mark of the collar to which my chain is fastened." "What? A chain?" cried the wolf. "Don't you go wherever you please?" "Not always. But what's the difference?" replied the dog. "All the difference in the world. I don't care a rap for your feast, and I wouldn't take all the tender young lambs in the world at that price." And away the wolf ran to the woods. There is nothing worth so much as liberty. Quick synopsis. Wolf spares dog, learns of dog's good fortune, insults him, and then he runs away. There are a few things here that could have gone differently, including the fact that the wolf could have just eaten that dog after he'd lost all respect for him. He's like, "Oh, you're a kept dog? You're well fed? I'm super hungry? Why don't I just eat you?" I know, they say in the story that the wolf is in a weakened state and he thinks the dog could take him, but I don't think that's the case. Plus, something must have happened to get to this point. He didn't just wake up one day completely starving. There's multiple versions of this one. I think there's 6. Each one of the versions takes a different tone in what they're saying, like having that leash on or having that collar on, what that means. Some of them get into slavery. Aesop was a slave in Greece, so a lot of these relate to him being enslaved. I did a little research and I found this article that is written by a professor named Edward Clayton, and he gave me permission to reproduce it, so here is some snippets of what he has to say about Aesop's life. The Encyclopedia of Philosophy, a peer-reviewed academic resource. This is from the introduction. Because the fables do not fit the model of philosophy that would be deployed later by thinkers like Plato and Aristotle and their successors, they are often disregarded by philosophers. And because they are regarded as having been written for children and slaves, they are often not taken seriously as a source of information about practical ethics in ancient Greece. Aesop's life can be found in the pseudo-biographical life of Aesop, which is believed to have been written in roughly the 2nd century CE. The details of his life, although they may be extremely fictional, are important because while today we tend to draw sharp distinctions between how a philosopher does their job and how they live their life, in ancient Greece and Rome it was much less the case. The philosopher was expected to live their life according to their principles, and accordingly what one did, or was believed to have done, had a real impact on how the philosophy was received. Therefore, Aesop's life can be seen as the embodiment of the principles he lived by, and vice versa. So he goes on, he writes a lot more stuff that's probably more important to philosophers, but I find this to be very important. Several versions of the life of Aesop have survived the centuries, and while they have differences, they are all the same in broad outline. Aesop, we are told by the unnamed author, was a slave from Samos, a Greek island in the northern Aegean. He has a number of distinctive traits. He was remarkably ugly, and is frequently compared to animals in terms of his appearance. He was born mute, entirely unable to speak, which is another trait usually associated with animals, who can make sounds but cannot make words or speeches. However, he was also remarkably intelligent and resourceful. This was illustrated by an incident early in life which he successfully was able to defend himself from a false accusation of eating a stolen fig by getting the other slaves. Okay, I'm gonna stop reading here. He drank warm water and threw up, and there was no fig. And then he got the other slaves to drink water, and they threw up, and one of them had a fig. Aesop communicated in a certain way because of who he was, and he was originally a slave. His rise from slavery to greatness also leads to his destruction. Him as being on the boundary between human beings and the other animals that feature so prominently in Aesop's fables. So what I'm getting at here is he'll have opinions about things, but you don't know what perspective he's taking it from. Jeffrey Taylor has a version, but his version makes it more like your neighbor that's living off credit in a gigantic house, where you have a modest house with not quite as many updates or remodels, and you're driving a Honda, but they live in your same neighborhood. They have the same house that they started with, but now all of a sudden they've got a second floor in a Mercedes and a real depressed look on their face. They don't really have a moral in this Jeffrey Taylor one. It's more anecdotal. They say our neighbors sometimes seem to be a vast deal better off than we, since they have troubles to bear, which, if the truths were really known, are quite as grievous as our own. So they make it a little poetic there, but also they're saying that your neighbor's hiding something and they're not living as well as they appear to be living, which is a good percentage of America, and the world probably. Samuel Croax gets all into how the dog is a little fierce and that's why they tie him up. They're extremely descriptive there. The JRB collection, the dog's a Mastiff, so he's huge, but he's not tied up all the time. All the versions, the dog is not tied up all the time. He's just tied up sometimes. This makes me think of my relationship with dogs. I had a dog for 16 years, and she listened, she sat, she would wait at the top of the stairs before I went down the stairs, unlike a lot of other dogs that'll just barrel into you and they don't care. They won't realize that you're laying at the bottom of the stairs dead until you can't feed them that night. My dog was very well trained, and I didn't like putting a leash on her, but I had to because it was the law. I don't think if the park ranger, when I'm walking through the park, if I'm walking with the dog off the leash, that I can send that bill to the wolf and say, give my dog liberty. Some people don't care what their dogs do. Most of those people are called dog rescue people. When I worked in dog rescue, we would give dogs to fosters to take care of when they were, on their way to being adopted. You need to put different dogs in different homes, and you save as many dogs as you possibly can. I remember one time, one of the fosters was feeding the dog ice cream with a spoon, and the dog swallowed the spoon. And this lady called me up, and she said, the dog swallowed the spoon, what am I supposed to do? And I said, what you're supposed to do is take that dog to the vet and empty out your bank account, because vets are pretty expensive, but I don't know why that dog's eating with a spoon. And her excuse was because it was eating ice cream. No. The dog shouldn't be eating ice cream, and it should also just be eating with its face. I've never met a dog that eats better with anything other than just its face. I met people that would sooner kick a baby into the street to save a dog than let anything terrible happen to that dog. The best thing to do with a dog rescue is save the dog and never look back. Don't call them with any questions. They'll try and shake you down for information. Hey, how's your dog feeling? Then they'll tell you they can take it back from you. I've seen these wolves do terrible things to lambs in these stories. I think at one point the wolf wanted to steal a baby. You're going to steal a baby, but you're not going to eat a dog who's too dumb to realize that he's being held captive in your eyes? So who's learning the lesson here? Not the dog. The dog doesn't have a lesson to learn. He's going to go back home. He seems as happy as can be. He's like, what's the difference? He doesn't care. The wolf isn't learning any sort of lesson because he's walking away hungry. So what I'm getting at here, if you're a wolf, you want to be free. You want to run around and you want to kill a whole bunch of things. What's wrong with this wolf? This is like a fraidy wolf. He obviously has some sort of problems. Why doesn't he just kill that dog? He feels bad for the dog because it's so well fed and he's freely walking the streets. How kept is this dog? He's out in the open. I'm thinking maybe this wolf is an anorexic and possibly of the emo sort of wolf. He's just sad about things and somehow he's trying to blame the dog. He's like, no, you're a kept dog. It's like, no, you're a depressed wolf. His meal was right there in front of him. I've seen anti-maskers out there crying threats to their liberties, but having no regard for other people who have life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, which I'd imagine the pursuit of happiness includes not having to get spit on by somebody without a mask. The way I'm seeing it is, if you are an anti-masker, you're a little like the wolf. I'd rather get sick than put this mask on. And you can say that the science isn't there and whatever you want to do, but it's a mask. They're really not taking away any of your liberties. People are trying to keep you safe. I find that to be very strange. If that's polarizing, I guess you don't have to subscribe to the podcast, but I do prefer all masked listeners. You don't have to wear a mask while you're listening. The other thing that I realized is I think Aesop is trying to teach kids that if their dogs were smart enough to know that they were being held captive, they'd eat them like that wolf might. So, lucky kids, lucky people, we got these dogs that are too dumb to realize that they're being held captive. And if they were a wolf, in this case, they'd probably run away just mad at us. This has been Deconstructing, The Wolf and the House Dog. I hope you enjoyed it. There's a point in there somewhere. I've been John Wilkins. Thank you for tuning in. You got some thoughts in your head and you want to make yourself a podcast? Well, here at Anchor, there are creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. Anchor will distribute your podcast. This here podcast is on 7 platforms. I don't know if there's more, but if there are, I'm sure Anchor's doing their best to get it out there. You can make money on your podcast. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. Hello, this is John Wilkins. If there is a specific fable that you would like deconstructed, I am happy to do it. Find Aesop's Fables on Facebook and then pick out a fable that's been read, and I'll be happy to deconstruct that one sooner than another one. Also, if you're familiar with Hit Record, I have a project there where you can write your own fable. Input is always welcome. Just send a message. Links are in the details section.